Good morning, friends. Today I want to talk about my thoughts on urban planning. Super exciting, I know. I'm not gonna get into crazy detail or anything, just sort of high level thoughts. So, I grew up in rural Iceland, farms, very rural. You knew everyone. Spent half my childhood there and half in Reykjavik, so tried a bit of both. Reykjavik is basically, well, most of it is like not as crazy as suburban America, but it's like a step down. It's quite sprawly though. It's very car-brained. You need a car. And then I lived in Norwich in the UK, which I would call kind of medium density. A lot of terraced houses is the default. Obviously, the center is more dense. And then I lived in Victoria in Canada, which people say is very a very British city, but it's very sprawly. It's maybe not as bad as some other. It's not like the typical grid you get in North America, but and maybe that's what people mean by it being more British. But it's definitely sprawly. Public transport was okay, but you have to walk a lot or have a car. I was a student, so didn't have a car. And then I lived in Vancouver, and that's, your typical North American city. And then I lived in Hong Kong, which is where I am now, which is very dense, your typical Asian city. And then I lived in London, which is its own thing, I suppose. Bit of a different type of city where you have effectively multiple cities forming up one big metro area. Some of it high density, some of it medium. None of it very high density, I suppose, but anyway. And then now I'm back in Hong Kong. I also lived in, I guess, kind of small town in the UK. So again, like lower density, probably below middle sort of density. So I've tried a bit of everything, really. I guess I haven't lived in like an American city, but I think Canadian cities are pretty similar. So where to start? I think this is going to be a theme on this channel. I usually film these when I take my son on his morning walk. He can't walk, but you might hear him in the background sometimes. Basically, this is a very pro-natalist channel. That's what most of my rants will sort of connect back to in some way. But I think my issue with the big cities that are the economic centers of the world, so you have cities like New York and London and Asian cities as well, is that the urban planning ideology that is behind them is inherently very you could say it's anti-human, but it's a bit dramatic, but it's very anti-children. And I don't like that. I don't think that's good for society. And I think this was most obvious in London, but I think in general, my take anyway, is that if people want to have kids, they want to have space. And they ideally want to have outdoor space, and they want to have a car. When you have a kid, you want to have a car. When I had a cat, I wanted to have a car because my cat got sick, and I hated having to take it on public transport when it got sick. It's worse as a kid. Like, taking a sick kid on public transport is definitely worse than taking a sick cat. So I think that changed my perspective a little bit. When I was younger, I didn't really care that much. It's whatever. It's not something you think about as much, but so where to start? I think the ideology that underpins a lot of what I guess you could call like modern urban planning is that it's all about density, and it's all about building inwards. It's all about less roads, more public transport, which in theory is fine in some areas. But when that becomes the only, when that's the only thing that people focus on, that effectively results in these what you call child unfriendly cities. And there's other variables to this equation, if you will. There's obviously opportunity is concentrated in these cities. That's a problem. Space is a problem. There's a bunch of other stuff. I'm just talking about the ideology behind urban planning and what is considered good urban planning, which is generally more density, less space, smaller flats, higher towers, more public transport. And don't think I'm some like ideologically car-brained person. I love public transport. I hate driving. But when you have kids, you want to have the option to. You want to have the option to drive. And in general, you just want to have the option to drive. It's good to have that. So I think out of like all of the places I've lived, the Norwich was actually the best balance of everything. The sort of medium density terraced houses in the UK, I think those were great. It's energy efficient as well because they're connected, so you don't lose heat from two of your walls. But also it's dense enough to be walkable. It's dense enough to have decent public transport. You can usually get a bus somewhere nearby, or if you're in a bigger city, you can get like a metro. And it's usually dense enough to have some sort of amenities within walking distance, although I'm not sure if that applies to the UK anymore, because it's become very difficult to have a sustainable business that is like on a physical location. And that's true in not just in the UK, in most cities. Like when I was growing up in Iceland, we had like a local shop in my neighborhood, and thinking about that now just seems absurd that was ever even profitable. But I guess people went there for that was pre-Netflix, so people went there to rent movies and stuff. But still, it's crazy to think about. So I think like that sort of medium density terraced houses, UK cities, that was the sweet spot for me. And you could have a car. You had a little space for a car. Sometimes it's on-street parking, but it varies. I really, really dislike the sprawl of North America. I really disliked it. I talked about it in my first video as well. When I lived in Canada, I just missed the cities in the UK. In Asia, I love the density. It's its own thing. It's really fun. It's really interesting, really vibrant. There's people everywhere. It's not super dense around, but you still have these like pretty big towers. Like this would be a like fairly substantial building in most places, but here that's like a small tower. So I love like the density of Asian cities, but I wouldn't say it's sheltering. I'm not complaining. Like it's like like where I live is fine, but it's I understand why. I guess when I'm quite far out from the center of Hong Kong, so that's why it's quite, I have all this greenery and it's quite spacious here. But if you're in a super crowded area, it's not very nice for kids. Also, it's less outdoor space, etc. Here, it's not too bad. But anyway, that's not the point. I'm just saying, I think the ideology that underpins, and I see this in Reykjavik in Iceland, around basically only building inwards. You only build flats. Like a lot of places do this. They don't build houses anymore because they see houses as like an uneconomical or like wasteful thing almost. Just building flats, getting rid of cars, public transport only is like, I get the ideology behind it, but my point is basically it's not child friendly, and I think that's the problem. I think that's when you're concentrating all the economic activity in those areas and you are making them child unfriendly. That is like you're basically combining two things that are not good, and part of the reason why birth rates are falling, which is something I will talk about a lot and I have a lot of thoughts on. And please don't think I'm one of those anti-immigration crazy great replacement people, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Bye.